Hello, everyone. Welcome to Street MD versus the Carnivore MD 2.0. Now, brother, you look like a really nice guy. Did someone take your username or did something happen to your account the first time? What happened?
Man, I got deleted. So it's for the thing that we can't talk about. Most of the listeners will understand this, but I started out doing content when I was in residency at the University of Washington, something we can talk about in this podcast. And most of my content was about food stuff. And then this thing happened to the world a few years ago. And I guess I made the mistake of speaking about my ideas about that thing. And I was talking about how important it was to be metabolically healthy. And I was talking about the evidence that I saw that those who were metabolically healthy did much better with this thing that happened to the world. And I was sort of asking questions about why there wasn't more discussion of metabolic health, why there wasn't more discussion about diets and processed foods and the impact of the way that we were eating on our lives in the midst of this global thing that was very hard for all of us to get through. And then I got canceled. So that was what happened.
It's not even a theory, brother. I mean, it's a fact at this point about metabolic health. I had over 500,000 people follow my account on TikTok. And when I got deleted for speaking the truth, it really hurt, man. But for you, you bounced back really well. And you seem like, people are resonating with your message even more now.
Yeah, I think it was an opportunity to refine the message and to get stronger. And yeah, there are a lot of people who are, I think, enjoying the content or finding value in the Carnivore MD 2.0 account on Instagram. And on TikTok, I got deleted too, but that was mostly for, I think, showing raw organs. TikTok is so delicate, and I got multiple strikes on TikTok for showing raw organs. I got a strike for jumping off a waterfall. I got a strike on TikTok for showing at least one, maybe two strikes on TikTok for showing footage that I had filmed of Hadza hunter-gatherers in Tanzania when I was in Tanzania, doing what they've done for, tens of thousands of years as Hadza in Tanzania, and which was eating animals. And it was too much for the TikTok audience it was too much for the TikTok life.
Well, clearly you had to show some booty, then you'd be just fine, right?
I guess so. Yeah. If I'd shown maybe some bikini photos or bikini pictures, then I might've stayed on TikTok a little more. Or I didn't do enough dancing. That was probably the problem.
That's what you need. I would love to talk to you a little bit about medical school because we're both MDs. We both are allopathic medical doctors. We're not necessarily practicing exactly the way they taught us. But I got to tell you, I was someone who was just angry throughout medical school. I was really pissed off because I was sick and tired of them teaching us things that we had to remember and just memorize that had absolutely no value for our clients. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, it's been a long journey for me. I joke that I unfortunately went to medical school like 1.5 times because I was a PA before I went to medical school. So my dad's a doctor and I saw him basically martyr himself to the Western medical establishment in the 1980s and 1990s by just overworking. And he was an internist. So there were no hospitalists in the 80s and 90s. So he would work all day and then go to the hospital at night to round on patients. I didn't see him enough growing up. I didn't see him much growing up. He got unhealthy. So this is my father, who's a physician that doesn't understand how to eat. He became obese and had a lot of issues. And so I looked at that and said, I don't want to become a doctor. I'm going to go to PA school. So I went to school at George Washington to become a physician assistant. And in the beginning, it sounded great because I didn't really know any better. I had no sense of the mainstream medical establishment and it's the good things about it and the bad things about it. So I went into it really kind of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited to practice as a physician assistant. And it was within really the first year of practice as a PA that I became kind of disillusioned with the way that I was practicing medicine. It became very clear once I was actually boots on the ground, quote unquote, that what I was doing was just giving people medications for symptoms. I'm sure you've experienced this without any real challenge or any tools to approach the root cause of the illnesses they were experiencing. So for the first 4 years, I worked in cardiology, and the cardiologists I worked with were super smart and really well-intentioned and great humans, but we weren't really thinking about what was causing atherosclerosis We weren't thinking about what was causing heart attacks. We weren't thinking about what was causing heart failures or arrhythmias. And we weren't really thinking about what was causing diabetes, which is obviously a huge comorbidity for all of our patients who have cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So I went back to medical school. I guess I was glutton for punishment. I kind of had this sense that there was more medicine out there that was focused on the root cause. I'd heard about this thing called functional medicine. And so I went back to medical school with the intention of practicing that. I went to the University of Arizona, where they have this Center for Integrative Medicine. Andrew Weil was there, and I wanted to study there and understand their perspective on integrative medicine. So, but I was just consistently disappointed in medical school. A funny thing that not many people know about me is that I almost got kicked out of PA school. I almost got kicked out of medical school, and I almost got kicked out of residency because I was just I think that it was just because I asked a lot of questions and people didn't like it.
For that reason.
Yeah, it's just that you rub people the wrong way when you ask questions. And, I would bring articles to my professors and articles to my supervising residents and attendings and say, what about this article that shows, for instance, on a cardiology rotation in medical school or in residency, what about this article that says that people with high LDL, quote unquote, who have low triglycerides and high HDL. What about this article that says that those people don't have an elevated risk of cardiovascular disease, or it says that their LDL is not a good predictor of, their cardiovascular risk? And they brushed it aside. They didn't want to talk about diet. They didn't want to talk about any of these things. And I think that I didn't really almost get kicked out, but it was difficult. Like
I almost got kicked out of medical school 3 times, but that was for telling off the histology professor that his course was whack. I did stupid things like that. You're actually bringing research articles and challenging them.
Yeah. And it was just that, people don't like that you're a disruptor. And when you ask the questions. So it was pretty frustrating.
Okay. So are we in agreement that something like this, memorizing this, has absolutely zero value for our clients?
Well, the thing about that is that I think fatty acids are fascinating.
Exactly. Well, if they taught us these are the kind of fats that we should be consuming for optimal health, that's one thing. But that memorizing a triglyceride fat molecule is not going to help anyone here.
No, it's not. Nor is really memorizing the Krebs cycle or the TCA cycle going to help anyone. But if they'd given context to it, later on after medical school, I got really interested in metabolism and physiology and the way that the foods we eat affect things and the way that nutrients can affect the Krebs cycle. And that to me was a useful application of the Krebs cycle. But when I was in medical school, I was not challenged with any of that. I didn't understand the actual real world applications of the Krebs cycle or understanding which intermediates you might want to look at on an organic acids panel to give you a sense of certain problems with metabolism. But and I wish I'd learned about, linoleic acid in medical school, but that was not taught.
Did you ever practice medicine after residency? Did you ever prescribe a drug in your lifetime?
Not after residency. No. Really? No, I'd never prescribed a drug after residency. For about a year after residency, I went to medical school late because after college, I took 6 years off and was a ski bum. I thru hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and I was traveling and just climbing mountains and skiing and working in bike shops. That's what makes
you cool. That's what
maybe. I think it definitely, I would never change it. And I think it gave me a different perspective. But then I went to PA school, which was 2 years master's, and then 4 years of practice as a PA. And then I went to medical school, which was 4 years. And then I went to residency, which was 4 years. So by the time I graduated residency, I was 41 years old, or 40. I might have almost been 42 years old when I graduated residency. So I practiced, quote unquote, for a year after residency, doing virtual medicine with clients throughout the world, doing consultations with regard to nutrition. And then the last couple of years, I've stopped that and focused entirely on the educational piece. And I think that that's been a really fun thing to do, podcasting, to do social media, to try and teach. And I think the goal is to eventually teach medical students or to affect the way medical students are taught. But that's what I do now.
Yeah. I still prescribe some medications, but I'm a detox specialist. I specialize in helping people who don't want to be on psychiatric medications come off of psych meds, So I sometimes use medications to help alleviate symptoms of withdrawal, So there's like a smart way of prescribing it and so on. Are you someone who feel like all drugs are bad, all medications have no purpose?
Of course not. No, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say of course not. It's just definitely not. Medications clearly have a role for humans. When I was in residency on my psychiatry rotations, I thought that I really thought addictions medicine was pretty interesting. And the use of Harvoni for people in the VA system who had hepatitis C was amazing. So Harvoni is this antiviral medication that it basically treats and cures hepatitis C. It's an incredible thing, a drug that treats an illness that we had no real cure, quote unquote, in the past. And so there are plenty of amazing uses of medications that happen in medicine.
Word has it on the streets, and please let me know if this is legit or not, but male testosterone levels have been decreasing about 1% per year since the 70s.
Male testosterone levels are decreasing, and then our taints are shrinking too as guys. You know, the anogenital distance is shrinking also, and our penises are getting smaller. All scary things.
Yeah. Have you ever tried testicles before?
Oh, I have bull testicles all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's that taste like?
I kind of taste like. Do you like sushi? Do you ever had uni?
Yes, I love uni.
It's pretty close to. It's the closest thing. It's like uni, kind of like sea urchin. Yeah, I could give you. So bull testicle is like mild, and a little bit oceanic, perhaps. Probably because of the essential fatty acids in there, something like fish have. If I sliced the testicle really thin and I gave it to you either as sashimi or nigiri, and I told you it was some like really, delicacy or some fish, you'd probably think it was reasonably good. I think most people listening to this would eat it if Carnivore MD were the sushi chef incognito and I gave you some bull testicle, you might think, oh, that's all right. That's okay. I mean, that's like an adventurous piece of sushi, but that's what it tastes like. And what's so interesting is that we know that testicle contains testosterone. Like that's not even a question, right? There's testosterone in that testicle, but there's also zinc and selenium and all of the things that are in those Sertoli cells and the Leydig cells that are surrounding the seminiferous tubules to make testosterone and promote the formation of sperm. So there's a lot of men who benefit from consuming testicle these days, either in desiccated form, like we make it hard in soil, or in fresh, form, like a raw bull testicle. So those men might not want to think about the fact that there's sperm or semen in the testicles, but that's how it works. And there is testosterone coming from those cells in the testicle.
But I've seen like videos of the Liver King just eating a raw liver contest and doing pretty well there. And it's hard for me I kind of have to like unbrainwash myself to get used to being open to more organ meats because I hear way too many good things about them. But thank God that you actually have a supplement company, Heart and Soil Supplements. I mean, people who don't want to eat raw liver or testicles or so on, you actually make it easier for them.
Yeah, the hope is that it just makes it easier. I would prefer that people eat fresh organs, but I knew that my sister, my mom, my dad would never eat raw liver probably in their life. They certainly would never eat raw spleen or kidney or brain. And they probably wouldn't eat bones. They might eat bone marrow perhaps, but they're not going to eat the bones. And so my mom takes, this supplement that we make called Bone Matrix because she's 72 and she was previously osteopenic. She had low bone density scores. And so this is actually one intervention that has improved her bone density, apparently. So we make this microcrystalline hydroxyapatite that she can take in bones. And she also takes bone marrow and liver. And my mom is not going to eat liver. She's 72 years old, but at least subjectively, she reports, and this is important to me because it's my family, that her brain feels different when she gets organs. I would prefer that she get fresh organs. And every time I go home, I try to get my family to eat fresh organs. But like my niece and nephew also, they're 5 and 3 respectively. They didn't get raw organs when they were like really young. So it's probably going to be hard to get them raw organs. But if you just open a capsule of the desiccated organs, it works great. And we'll get you some because maybe, I don't know, it sounds like you're a little hesitant for these organs too.
I am, but I just keep hearing so many good things about eating raw organs. And I don't do that. I just eat the muscle, I'm a paleo kind of guy. So, I feel like I've been missing out on this for a while. So I'm really interested in checking out your supplement line. But can you tell us
You can even cook the organs. You don't have to eat raw. You can even cook the organs. I mean, this morning for breakfast, I had cooked heart. It's a good place to start. Heart is a muscle, but what's so interesting is that different physiologic processes are happening in different parts of the body. So the heart has more coenzyme Q10 than the peripheral muscle, and the heart has much more riboflavin than the peripheral muscle. Riboflavin is vitamin B2, and you're probably familiar with riboflavin from the perspective of mental health stuff and the importance of riboflavin, especially in people with MTHFR polymorphisms.
Yes.
So this enzyme, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. I'm Italian, and I have this 677C to T polymorphism at MTHFR. So what we know is that if you get a little more riboflavin than the RDA, so the RDA for riboflavin, I believe, is around 1 milligram a day, give or take. But I believe in the studies that were done, 2 to 3 milligrams of riboflavin a day will sort of allosterically affect the MTHFR enzyme and correct the sluggishness, quote unquote, with which MTHFR converts 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate to L5 methylfolate just by getting more riboflavin. A lot of times in these situations in the past, I'd given patients, L-methylfolate, and you can actually correct it provided that someone is getting a reasonable amount of folate in their diet from things like liver or egg yolks, or even from fruit. In the spectrum of foods that I think are optimal for humans, you can give them a little more riboflavin and their MTHFR enzyme works way better. And riboflavin is really only present in significant amounts in liver and heart. That's the most, rich sources of riboflavin. It's very hard for people to get enough riboflavin if they're just eating muscle meat. And it's really, really hard for people to get enough riboflavin. I would say virtually impossible if you're not eating any animal foods.
Okay, so MTHFR gene mutation is huge in my practice. I would say at least 50% of the people walking in through that door have some issues with this, which affects your body's ability to produce serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine efficiently. So for your brand, Heart and Soil, what is the supplement that has the nutrients that could help out with this condition? So I can refer to my clients. Yeah,
you'd want something that has the most heart and liver, and the one that we make is Warrior. So the Warrior it's a collaboration with George St. Pierre, who's this famous MMA guy, and it's just desiccated heart and desiccated liver. So I would recommend your clients either get fresh heart and liver or try something like desiccated heart and liver together. Yeah. You may experience this. I guess this is one of the benefits of what you're doing is you're seeing people in person. One of the hardest things for me now, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix this, is that I don't interact with people who are affected by my content, either positively or negatively, but I hope the positively is more than the negative. I don't interact with people very often in the real world. And so as humans, I think that it's difficult for me to see the good or the bad that the content is doing. And I think it's doing more good than bad. When I travel, increasingly people might recognize me. And that's really cool. I mean, even here in Costa Rica, where I spend part of the year, I get recognized on the beach sometimes. And that's really encouraging because most of the time people say that making dietary changes, whether it's cutting out vegetables or cutting out grains or cutting out seed oils and focusing on meat and organs has made a massive difference for them. And then they always say, keep doing what you're doing. And that's really important to me because doing this work in a virtual space, it's very easy to get in my head and think I'm not having an impact. Or I think as humans, we psychologically have this, I don't know if it's a feature or a bug. Evolutionarily, it probably was a feature, but for me now it's a bug, meaning that it's a foible that we focus on the negative voices more than the positive voices. Yeah. I might do a post about seed oils and there are 1,000 comments and maybe 985 of them are positive and 15 are negative. And of course, I'm going to focus on the negative ones. And that's good because it helps me correct course or understand people who have opinions or ideas that may be different than mine, or understand what pieces of evidence I really need to dive down on to really make a strong case that I think this is a problematic thing for humans. But seeing people in person in your practice, I'm sure is very valuable because as a human, I mean, this is our evolution, right? We're not virtual digital beings yet. I'm not sure I hope that we ever become that, but understanding what people in your tribe are experiencing and understanding that you've done something good for someone in your tribe, being able to look them in the eye and see them, that's really powerful for us as humans. And I think it's really reinforcing. So yeah, that's the negative part of what I do. And I'm trying to understand how to incorporate things in my life where I can get some real-time personal feedback from the people that are being affected by what I'm doing.
Oh, you're making a tremendous impact. All right. And even for the people who don't agree with your message, they'll watch it like 3 times. They're boosting your engagement and all this stuff too. Because I think you create amazing, I don't think your intention is to necessarily make it addicting, but it is very addicting. And the way you present it, your team, shout out to whoever's managing your social media, man. Shout out to that person.
It's challenging. I mean, at this point I have a guy who helps me. We think about ideas and then we create it sort of together. But mostly it's just me and a team of video editors.
I respect anyone who could make an impact that's creating content greater than 30 seconds, man. This 8-second nonsense is killing me and killing the kids. It makes it harder for these kids to even watch a 1-minute video nowadays because everything is like 8 seconds, 10 seconds. It's nonsense.
It's a little scary to think about where our attention spans are going. You mentioned TikTok. I don't understand. I mean, I create content for TikTok because there are people there that I hope will benefit. But yeah, man, it's a scary world. And the fact that TikTok has the highest time on platform is crazy.
You and I consider people like you and me to be a part of the truth movements, per se. In this movement, there are different departments. There's a psychological department. There's a food department. There's people who are trying to make people aware of some of the harms of big pharma, finances, and so on. But in the food departments, there's like an inner war amongst the foodies too. The vegans and then the keto guys, carnivore, so on. And it could get very confusing because I think all groups are in agreement that processed foods are bad for you. I mean, we're all in agreement with that.
Not everyone. But let's just exclude that group. I think that there are some people on social media who believe that it's calories in, calories out, and that you could create a quote unquote healthy human by giving them a calorie restricted diet, regardless of food quality, and give them a multivitamin and they would be healthy. And perhaps you could split hairs and say that, yes, you could feed humans Twinkies in a calorie restricted fashion and give them a multivitamin, and they probably would get quote unquote healthier for some short amount of time. Because we know that the Twinkie diet did improve. I forget the experimenter's name, but somebody did a diet where he just ate Twinkies and his insulin resistance got better. We know that caloric restriction, regardless of food quality, can improve insulin resistance because weight loss is such a powerful thing for moving the needle in terms of health. But I think what these influencers miss is the notion that there are all of these micronutrients that are essential for long-term health for humans that are not found in multivitamins and that are not really bioavailable outside of a food form. This food matrix is so complex. We're just beginning to understand. This wraps back to our discussion of organs, and I won't belabor it, but I'll just say there are peptides in organs that we don't really fully understand. I mean, BPC 157 is a peptide that's been used both orally and subcutaneously for humans that is found in stomach and intestine. There are peptides found in testicles. There are peptides found in the liver. There are peptides which are short molecules of proteins. I think the technical definition is less than 50 amino acids. And we don't really fully understand how these affect human physiology. I've also never seen a multivitamin that contains ergothioneine, a molecule that is probably valuable for humans in terms of aging. There's a really interesting set of studies looking at brain, specifically cow brain. And what they did is they gave patients desiccated cow brain. And this improved their aging. This improved cognitive decline in the elderly when they gave them desiccated cow brain. So the researchers hypothesized that this was due to phosphatidylserine in the desiccated cow brain, because we know that phosphatidylserine is a fatty acid that is found in the brain in rich amounts. So then they took a plant form of phosphatidylserine and gave it to patients with no improvements in their cognitive decline.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's just other things in animal food specifically is what I think of. People could argue the flip side that there's benefits of certain plant foods, and that's a separate discussion, plant foods versus animal foods. But I am interested in the evidence showing that there's really unique benefits to whole animal foods. Even muscle meat is a really valuable thing. There's no there's absolutely no multivitamin that has creatine. And we know that if you take vegetarians and you give them 5 grams of creatine a day for a month, or 20 grams of creatine a day for 5 days as a loading dose, they do better on memory tasks, on card sorting. They essentially get smarter. So you can make vegetarians smarter by giving them creatine, but there's no multivitamin with creatine. So this list of micronutrients that really, I think, supports us as humans, that buttresses optimal health, performance mentally, sexually, physically, all the realms that we exist in as humans. To really be the best human, I think we need real foods. And I don't understand why that's a radical concept. I'll just say that, and then we can move on, because I think that it's a small portion, but there is a portion of people on social media that don't understand this concept. But we can now talk about the group who thinks that processed foods are bad.
Almost everyone nowadays and their mother is labeled with ADHD. And I love to recommend taking a good omega-3 fatty acid with phosphatidylserine. So do you have a product for Heart and Soul that contains, those 2 ingredients?
Yeah. So it would be the brain product. It's called Mood, Memory, and Brain so it'd be brain derived essential fatty acids, DHA, EPA, probably DPA in the brain as well. So it's actual desiccated cow brain with liver and another organ in there. So
I love it. So then I don't know if you're allowed to say this or not, but can I recommend this to teenagers?
Of course. I mean, it's a food. I know,
man, but it gets really weird with the FDA and stuff. Like, I can't technically recommend on social media that kids could take my supplement, and it gets really weird. So
I think that for me, it's the message that I want people to understand is eat the organs and preferably eat them fresh. It's impossible to get cow brain in the United States. You can get lamb brain. If you can convince a teenager to eat lamb brain, I would do a dance, and we'll post it on TikTok because I don't think we're ever going to convince any teenager to eat lamb brain, much less a child or an adult. I mean, lamb brain is delicious, but you can get lamb brain, but it's hard, which is why I think desiccated organs are a good thing for people, because it helps them get the nutrients in there. But yeah, there are these essential fatty acids in there. The other thing that would be good for people, from my perspective, is just egg yolks. I think egg yolks are a great source of these essential fatty acids.
Yeah. Now, for the people watching this, Dr. Paul's not saying this, but I'm saying that as a psychiatrist, as a holistic psychiatrist, every single one of my clients who have attention deficit struggles, I recommend they take phosphatidylserine and a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. So
the other thing I'll say is I'll add this, Joe, is that I think the reason, this is just my hypothesis, I think the reason that a lot of these kids benefit from omega-3 is because they're not making any omega-3 because they're eating too many omega-6s. So this is part of the seed oil conversation, and people need to understand that omega-6 and omega-3 refers to where in the fatty acid molecule the first double bond is from the end of the molecule. So an omega-3 is 3 carbons from the end of the molecule, and omega-6 is 6 positions. But these fatty acids share a series of enzymes in human physiology, desaturases and elongases. Desaturases add double bonds, and elongases add carbons. And
so you did memorize those structures in medical school. That was helpful for you.
This is after medical school, bro. I only memorized it when I knew that it was valuable, right? It's like when I had to read Wuthering Heights in high school, I didn't give a shit about, about Emily Bronte and what she was writing. But if I had to read Wuthering Heights today, I might appreciate it more. Or James Joyce. I hated A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. I hated it. But maybe today, I could approach it. Or Virginia Woolf. Anyway, you get the idea that this literature, you force literature on kids, they're not interested, but when they're ready for it, it's fascinating. And I think this shared cascade of desaturases and elongases by which the body takes fatty acids like alpha linolenic acid, which is found in plant foods and animal foods, and turns them into omega-3s that you and I both know, and most of our listeners know, are essential for optimal brain function, DHA, EPA, and DPA. But the way you get from ALA to DPA is through a series of reactions that can be inhibited if you're eating too many omega-6s, because the omega-6s have the same cascade. It goes from linoleic acid to, gamma linoleic acid through arachidonic acid. And for whatever reason in our bodies, the omega-6 cascade tends to prevail, and we make more omega-6s, and it inhibits our production of omega-3s. So I think that one other thing that this is probably a harder thing for these kids, but I wish that we could help teenagers or adults or children who struggle with ADHD understand is the importance of avoiding these excess seed oils in their diet. And I think that combined with getting them good sources of omega-3s, those two things together would really turn the brains on. So you can add things, but I think in this case, we should be thinking about how to counsel them. What do you need to take away? Now, the challenge here, of course, is that everything, quote unquote, that most children and teenagers eat is going to have seed oils. The two main seed oils are soybean and canola. And so much food that we eat in the mainstream world that we live in is going to have those things.
Do you find it harder and harder nowadays? Maybe not for you, but for people in general, if you had to guess, it's just getting harder and harder for them to find a healthy place to eat unless they prepare things themselves. They're constantly advertising hunger over health.
I agree. I was recently in Phoenix, and with my buddy, my brand manager, we went to a bunch of fast food restaurants at like an outdoor mall, a Mongolian grill, some other type of grill, a restaurant. Yeah. We went to a salad place. We went to Chipotle, and we just went to all these places that people can get food. And we asked them, what oil do you use on your food? So the Mongolian grill place used canola oil. And the shtick, the framework that I used for these places was I walked in and I said, hey, I have an allergy to these seed oils. I need to know, what's on your grill. And they said, oh, we use canola oil. Well, you can't ever eat here because we soak the whole grill, the Mongolian grill. I used to love this when I was in college. Yeah. The whole Mongolian grill gets soaked in canola oil overnight. That's canola oil just seeps into the grill. The flat top is just coated in canola oil. There was no canola oil in the United States before 1980. And as of 1995, almost all canola oil is GMO. And because it's glyphosate resistant, it's from something called a rapeseed. It's not even a human food. Some humans would have consumed foods like seeds, like sunflower seeds in small amounts, never in the amounts that are the equivalent of seed oils. And I'll talk about that today. But we've never even consumed rape seeds as humans because they're actually toxic for us. So in order to make canola oil, we have to remove a component of the rapeseed oil called erucic acid. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's ERUCIC. And that has been shown to have neurologic problems in animal models and potentially blood dyscrasias, so problems with the blood. So there's a compound in canola oil that must be removed in part of the process of making this oil, which is on every grill top, or almost every grill top at every fast food restaurant in the United States. It's in fryers across the world.
I actually know vegans who are beautiful people. They look very healthy, and they seem to do very well on their diet. And I actually had a client not too long ago who's a vegan who was having serious anxiety. And I recommend that she start consuming some grass-fed butter, and she got better. So there are some people who believe that, like, hey, the vegan thing works for some people, or for some people for a period of time. What are your thoughts on that?
There is this idea that all humans are different, that we're bio-individual. And I don't believe it that much. I mean, I think we're all Homo sapiens, and our biochemistry is pretty darn similar. You might have one MTHFR polymorphism. I may or may not have it, but we all pretty much are Homo sapiens. And we all have stomach acid that works in the same way. We all use intrinsic factor in our stomachs to bind B12 and absorb it. We all absorb iron, at the same place in our small intestines. And so I kind of struggle with the notion that there are some humans who will, quote unquote, thrive on a vegan diet, and there are some humans who will thrive on a meat-based diet or an animal-based diet. I always try to frame the things that I'm sharing on social media and teaching about from the perspective of, if you are thriving, don't change a thing about your diet. Right. But if you're not, those are the people that I'm speaking to, because I want to be respectful of people who believe that they are thriving. Yeah. But when I see these anecdotes of people who are, quote unquote, thriving on a vegan diet, I think a couple of things. The first thing that comes to mind is, how long have they been doing it? Because I've heard so many stories of vegans who were thriving in the beginning because they cut out processed foods, and 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years later, they really end up with issues, whether it's autoimmune issues, thyroid issues, endocrine issues, libido issues, psychiatric issues, sleep issues. They end up with issues almost invariably. It's just, I think that's what happens to Homo sapiens when we are really, really bad hunters. You can survive for a short amount of time without animals, but ultimately, if your tribe doesn't hunt animals, you are not going to thrive. That's just the way it works for us. So when I see these stories of people who are long-term vegans and they're quote unquote thriving, I wonder about it. I just don't believe that that's normal human physiology. I think they could even be better if they added meat to their diet and they're ideologically kind of boxing themselves in and won't do it, or perhaps that they are eating meat and not telling people about it. When I lived in Seattle for my residency at the University of Washington, I went to Alaska for a rotation. And I heard from fishermen there, this is just kind of hearsay, but I heard from fishermen that there were prominent vegans, predominantly in the Southern California area, and they were getting shipments of salmon, like very under the radar. This is like, how these male supplements will come to your house in like these packages and nobody knows what it is.
Right.
Like if a woman, buys a vibrator, it arrives to their house in this really discreet packaging. Well,
obviously, yes.
Same thing. Like there's salmon being shipped to vegans in like super discreet packaging. Like it says on it, like, this is full of plants. This isn't any fish or anything. Like this is like, okay, I don't know. I mean, I think that number one, these long-term vegans would be better if they ate meat. And there are a number of reasons why they might not that we can talk about. And number two, I think that there's some lack of truthfulness going on in this community as well.
But to be fair, your stance is if someone's doing well on the vegan diet, then do it. Whatever makes you happy and healthy.
Yeah. If someone's doing well on a vegan diet, do it. I get a little bit frustrated when people try and make their kids vegan because there's so much evidence that kids need meat. And I think that we should allow our children to grow up without too much indoctrination. I think when we have children, we inevitably are going to indoctrinate them with the way that we see the world. But I don't
especially
like
with the kids, their hormones have to develop properly.
So much has to develop properly. Their bone structure. We know that the vegan kids are smaller, that they have all sorts of health issues. I mean, this is just, again, a story, but it's a news story that I believe is real. There are people who have gone to jail in Australia and I think potentially the United States for harming children so much or even killing them on vegan diets. So vegan diets in children, I think, is a very bad thing. And that's a scary thing for me.
Yeah. Now, Paul, is this like a confirmation bias, where if someone believes that masks work, they could find plenty of articles on that versus, someone like me or you who don't want to wear it, then we could find articles supporting that. When it comes to overconsumption of meat, if you type that up on Google, it'll say that, you'll have increased risk for heart disease, cancer, a shorter lifespan, diabetes. What's that all about? Because again, it gets really confusing, man. People saying that, eating meat's bad for you. Other people saying eating vegetables are bad for you. Some people are saying drinking water is bad for you now. So people are confused.
Yeah, which is why I think I'll talk about why there's confusion there. But I think that the first thing I'll say is that conversations between people with differing opinions are critical. Yes. And I see people shying away from this now. And I don't know if it's part of our culture now that people want to be siloed or they want to exist in echo chambers. But there are so many people that I have tried to have respectful discussions with in the health space who have differing opinions than me, who will not do it, who just won't do it. So there are prominent people in the health space who believe that broccoli sprouts and sulforaphane are good for humans. And this person will not engage in debate. There are prominent people who believe that meat should be a condiment and that we should eat lots of fish and that we should eat lots of vegetables. And they describe this as a pegan diet and they will not engage. They will not have discussions. There are prominent people in the longevity community who believe that meat will shorten your life and they will not have discussions. There are prominent people who believe that plant defense chemicals in vegetables are good for humans. And I've tried to have these discussions, but they won't do it. So, and there's prominent people in the the cardiology space, in the overall medicine space, who believe that LDL is the single greatest risk factor or the single thing that we should be looking at in terms of decreasing our cardiovascular risk. And they believe that when people eat meat or organs with saturated fat and the LDL goes up, but the triglycerides go down and the HDL goes up and the fasting insulin goes down. Basically, this is a picture of improving metabolic health. They believe that that is a bad thing and that you should take a statin because your LDL is going up. And these people will also not engage in fruitful discussions. So I lament this, and I hope it will change. And I think it will change eventually, because there is a point at which the contrary discussions are undeniable and people must engage. But there's a lot of siloing of these ideas now. And yes, there are people who want to have these discussions in unproductive or disrespectful ways. And that's not something I'm interested in either. But that's a frustrating thing for me. I think people need to hear discussions. And then the second thing is just that many people are confused by the mainstream media's reporting of these issues. And I will just say that the mainstream media is also working on an agenda, and the mainstream media doesn't think that meat is good for humans. That's clear. And I don't know where that's coming from. But I've never seen an article, or I've very rarely, it's at least 10-1 in favor of meat being bad. I've very rarely seen articles in the popular press that meat is good for you, or that meat won't kill you. There was a really historic series of Time magazine covers with, like, talking about cholesterol. And then there was another one saying, oh, butter's actually not bad for you now. But yeah, it's very rare that the mainstream media admits that there's good evidence that meat is not harmful for humans, and that saturated fat is essential for proper health, both at the mental health level or hormonal level. And what the mainstream media will do is consistently rely on observational epidemiology, but not really educate the consumer of that media about what correlations are, how they're not causative, how you can't draw causative inference from correlations. And the fact that most of these things that are talked about, red meat shortens your life. Well, what evidence do we have for that? It's a correlation at best in people who are eating lots of meat, but also eating lots of brownies and seed oils and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Too much pot and laying on their couch all day watching TikTok.
Exactly. So there's no way that you can. This is the constant challenge, I think, in the work that we do, is educating people that they're not being told things, the full story. So it's very confusing for people. And I think that this is a challenging thing as a health consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, most of the clients that come in to see me are struggling with anxiety. And I was talking with this vegan lady who's really big on social media. And she made a video that said that energy cannot be created or destroyed. And so when these cows are getting slaughtered, they see their friends, their cow mates getting slaughtered, and they have like all this fear rising in them. And then they get slaughtered, and guess who's eating that meat? You. And you're going to have more anxiety. Is that legit, or is that bullshit?
I don't feel very anxious, and I eat a lot of meat. So at least in my N of one study, I'm going to say that that's probably bullshit. But I don't think most people have hunted in their lives. And most of us don't want to understand where these animals we're eating are coming from. And this gets into kind of ethical discussions. But the way that these cows are often slaughtered or killed or harvested is pretty darn humane. They're in these paddocks that kind of keep them from getting too anxious. They're in these spaces that allow them to feel secure. And they move into a space, and there's a bolt gun that goes on their head. So it's kind of a little bit of anthropomorphizing that she's saying, they're seeing their compatriots get killed. The videos that I've seen of cow harvesting are very humane, and the cows are pretty much calm. They have one bad day in their life. Most of us would do well to have only one bad day in our lives.
Wait, so it's like, hey cow, bah, bah, bah. That's how it goes?
It's just one bolt. It's a bolt gun. Yeah. So it's a bolt gun that goes on top of their head. There's somebody above them that places the bolt gun, and the bolt goes in a second, and they don't feel any pain. They're just out. It's like the lights go off. Gotcha. I went to Rome Ranch, which is a farm in Texas, last year at Thanksgiving, probably about a year ago now, for a turkey harvest. And I harvested my own turkey. They have turkeys that live on the property. They feed them really good food, good mix of, I guess, grains. And then the turkeys get a lot of wild food bugs in the environment. So I was excited to eat a semi-wild turkey, or a very well-raised turkey. And so you go into this container where the turkeys are, and you grab one by the leg, and then you hold the turkey in your hand. And I'm holding the turkey sort of in my arms. The turkey is calm because I'm wrapping the turkey up. And then you put the turkey upside down into this sort of funnel. And the funnel like allows the turkey to feel swaddled in some way, and they're calm. They're not screeching or doing anything. They're just kind of like upside down in this funnel, like this swaddle funnel. And we did the same thing. We use a bolt gun on their head and they're dead in an instant. And that's it. So there are lots of ways. And I don't know if anyone's actually done this experiment, but I would debate what she's saying and ask like, okay, show me that data, that there's increased catecholamines or increased cortisol in these cows after they're slaughtered. I mean, the vegan propaganda shows the worst of the worst. And certainly animals are mistreated and no one wants to see that. But there are many animals that are led to slaughter, especially from better farms, small scale farms, grass-fed, grass-finished farms, where the actual slaughtering process is quite humane. I mean, we all die. And yes, people don't want life to be lost. But I think what vegans also fail to understand is that in order to live, something else must die. And when they are eating their kale and spinach salads, while simultaneously patting themselves on the back, they don't understand that there's been many more lives lost in that field of monocropped kale and spinach, whether it's bugs or beetles or worms or birds or snakes or rabbits. And it just gets us into this very convoluted series of discussions about one life being different than another life. There's no real way for humans to exist on this planet without making an impact. And I think it's on each of us as individuals to use the nourishment that we get to do good in the world and to understand that if you choose to eat the most nourishing foods, which I think are pretty clearly animal foods, animal meat and organs, great, do good with that. That's
a very interesting perspective. I hadn't considered the insects and the other animals that are, munching off the leaves. Now,
well, they get killed, like, when the soil is tilled, and you got to think like there's an ecosystem on that land. Right. So maybe 30 or 40 miles from where I live here in Costa Rica, there's a palm plantation. And right where I live, it's all jungle. So there's trees and there's jungle and there's a clear ecosystem here, right? There's birds and butterflies and snakes and tapirs and agoutis. But when they made that palm plantation, they had to destroy the jungle. So the first thing you do is completely destroy any ecosystem that's there. So any bird, anything that's living there is displaced or destroyed. And then when you are growing it in the soil, you're also destroying things in the soil and then harvesting it.
Have you ever heard of this dude, the medical medium?
Yeah.
Now, Homeboy talks about how, now a lot of people are going to be upset by this statement from me, but he alleges that celery juice cures everything. If you're single, you're lonely, celery juice will cure that. So get you a girlfriend. Like, he's making outrageous claims. Now, having established that, some people have said celery juice helped me with my arthritis. All right, good. But what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that as much as I try to back up the ideas that I'm providing with medical literature, when you claim to be channeling Jesus, I guess you don't need to have any peer review. So you can just, I guess Jesus is the ultimate peer reviewer, and you can just say whatever you want, which makes it pretty easy to say whatever you want.
Okay.
If celery juice has helped people fix autoimmune disease, that's great. From my perspective, celery is a plant stem. And if you think like the plant, celery is likely to have defense chemicals in it. Whether or not some people are going to be more or less sensitive to those defense chemicals is probable. But specifically, there's lots of medical literature about psoralins. Have you heard of psoralins? No. Psoralens. And psoralins they're used in the treatment of psoriasis because you can give people PUVB light. So you give them psoralins. Either I think you might put it directly on the skin, and then you expose them to UVB light. But when psoralins are in the skin, and we know that psoralins do accumulate in the skin and they cross-link the DNA, when you eat foods like celery with psoralins in them, or turnips, anything in the Apiaceae family, or carrots, they make the skin more sensitive to sun damage. So there are case reports of people who are doing celery juicing and then going to tan, and they had severe phototoxic injury because the psoralins from the celery juice make the skin so much more sensitive to burning. For people that are interested in continuing to look young, there's a hypothesis here. Could celery juice make you age faster? Could it create wrinkles? Could it do more photo damaging to the sun? Could it contribute to all sorts of skin cancers? Melanoma, which is not entirely a sun-related cancer, that's multifactorial, but specifically squamous or basal cell cancers, These are all questions that we don't fully understand in medicine. And so this is the fun thing about the work that I do, is asking the question and getting people curious. Like, do you really need celery in your life? Was the celery juice what fixed your autoimmune disease? Or did you also cut out junk food and cookies, or maybe pasteurized milk, or some other food that is triggering your autoimmune disease when you also did celery? It's all multifactorial, which makes nutritional science and anecdote challenging, but interesting.
Now, for the people who say that, well, we have an epidemic of a lack of microbiome diversity. If someone's been eating plants all their lives, they could handle these plant defense chemicals. Their body's equipped to handle that. Just like if they were vegan all their life and then they ate steak, they'd get very nauseous and sick. So what are your thoughts on that, that some people would have the ability to fight off these plant chemicals if they ate a more diverse fiber diet? Then it would be a problem for them. But the average American who eats a lot of processed, they probably wouldn't be able to handle some of these plant toxins well.
It's an interesting idea. I've never seen any literature to really substantiate that. Most of these plant defense chemicals are processed in the liver rather than directly in the microbiome and the gut. So there's this phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver. And while it is true that some people who are exposed to toxins will upregulate phase 2 enzymes or enzymatic systems in the liver that do detoxification, sometimes those systems will take a precursor molecule and convert it into a toxic molecule. So it's very complicated when you start to look at detoxification. What's clear is that humans have a liver, and we evolved these detoxification systems as part of our arms race with plants. There's no question that plants contain defense chemicals. The question is how well any individual can detoxify them. And so to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to eat lots of plant defense chemicals if you are part of a tribe that is such a good hunter and gathering group of people that you don't have to eat vegetables. Now, we didn't talk about this earlier in the podcast, but let's delineate plant foods into fruit and everything else. Fruit is the part that plants want you to eat. It's sweet, it's colorful, it houses the seeds. Seeds are plant babies, and the plants want you to eat the seeds without destroying them so that they can move their DNA to the next generation, which is why they house the seeds often in colorful or sweet packages as fruit. But plants do not want you to eat leaves or stems or roots or seeds, because those are the parts of the plant that are part of the factory that makes the fruit and the seeds. Roots need to store energy from photosynthesis, which happens in the leaves with chlorophyll and chloroplasts, and the glucose or other byproducts of cellular respiration are moving through the plant in the plant's arteries and veins, which are called the phloem and the xylem, through the stem. And so there are a lot of plant chemicals, and that's an understatement. There are probably millions of plant chemicals that plants use to defend themselves from predation on their leaves, on their stems, on their roots, and on their seeds. And the question is, how good are you? How good am I at detoxifying those? And is it possible that in many individuals who are not optimal, who are not thriving with autoimmune disease, which is a very wide swath of things, I would consider psychiatric issues, mood issues to be many times autoimmune, neuroinflammatory. A lot of what we think about is autoimmune. Even cardiovascular disease could be thought of from an autoimmune paradigm. So if you have autoimmune issues, if you have issues going on, is it possible that some of these plant defense chemicals are contributing to those issues in you as a human? It's possible. That's the hypothesis that is sort of the underlying foundation of the work that I do. And it's based on my personal experience with eczema and asthma that got significantly better when I cut out vegetables. So it's probably not the major factor for everyone, but I think there are a lot of people who are not getting better because they're never told, maybe broccoli is a problem for you. Maybe all of these isothiocyanates in kale and broccoli and Brussels sprouts that you're told to eat are actually affecting your thyroid negatively, and et cetera.
You and that guy, Dave Asprey from Danger Coffee. I don't know if you know that dude. Really cool guy. But when it came to my attention that kale is bad for you, that was pretty traumatic for me, man, because I actually, what woke me up out of the matrix, per se, of medical schooling is this book called Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, MD. He's a nutritarian. He does say, you could eat some meats, but he's more the guy that's talking about nutrient density per calorie. Limit your calories get more nutrients. And he's really big on kale. So I've been telling my clients for the longest time, you got to eat a lot of kale. But you and Dave Asprey and many other people are saying, no, that's not true. But what if you steam these vegetables, steam the broccoli, steam the kale?
The kale is a problem for a number of reasons. It's moderate in terms of oxalates, which are dicarboxylic acids. But the main problem with kale and these brassica plants are isothiocyanates. And the precursors, so this is things like sulforaphane or allyl isothiocyanate or goitrin. But the precursors are glucosinolates. So like glucoraphanin is a precursor for sulforaphane. And the problem is that steaming kale won't get rid of glucoraphanin, but it will get rid of the enzyme myrosinase, which converts glucoraphanin into sulforaphane, which is the isothiocyanate. So you can get rid of the enzyme that converts the precursor into the active isothiocyanate. The problem is that most of us do have myrosinase in our guts. So even if you steam kale or you steam broccoli or you steam broccoli sprouts, you will still end up with glucoraphanins, glucosinolates, being converted into isothiocyanates. The most potent of these appear to be things like allyl isothiocyanate and goitrin in terms of thyroid damage or thyroid inhibition in the gut. So it doesn't really fix the problem. And let me just say a few words about Joel Fuhrman. Super nice guy. I've had him on the podcast. I had a discussion with him. He was one of the people who was willing to have these discussions. And the theory of nutrient density versus calories sounds good until you realize that it's based on concepts that are incorrect, which is the notion that all foods have the same bioavailability of their nutrients. So what Joel Fuhrman is missing, I will respectfully say, is that plant foods and animal foods do not have the same bioavailability of their nutrients in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. The iron in spinach is nothing like the heme iron in animal foods. The folate, the riboflavin, the biotin, the list goes on and on. They're not the same. The protein at the highest level is very clearly different in terms of bioavailability between plant foods and animal foods, with the latter, the animal foods, having much more bioavailability in terms of protein. So when you're talking about nutrients, let's just talk about a mineral like zinc. So people might look at pumpkin seeds and say, you can get zinc from pumpkin seeds. Right. No, you're not getting any zinc from pumpkin seeds because pumpkin seeds contain phytic acid. And in this case, they have oxalates. So when you're thinking about zinc, a good source of zinc is oysters. It's probably the best source of bioavailable zinc. And there's a great study, I believe it's from the 1960s. We've known this for 70 years. The best source of zinc is probably from oysters, but meat and organs are a great source of zinc as well. Zinc is essential for the formation of zinc finger proteins, which are involved in DNA repair, which probably in cancer surveillance and testosterone production, et cetera. People think about zinc with testosterone a lot. So if you eat an oyster, you can see blood levels of zinc rise. But if you eat that oyster with a corn tortilla, you're not absorbing any of that zinc. If you eat that oyster with beans, you're absorbing about 70% less zinc than you would from a regular oyster. So this is the problem with plant foods like beans or corn tortillas.
Oh, and I love beans, Paul.
I know Joel
Fuhrman I was led to believe that beans are one of the superfoods, beans, nuts, and seeds. But I know you got problems with seeds. What about like hemp seeds? I thought they were really rich in omega-3s.
Well, so hemp seeds are rich in alpha linolenic acid, so ALA, right? They don't have preformed EPA and DHA much. And you have to move that ALA through the desaturase and elongase enzymes to get the EPA and DHA that you need. So people like the hemp seeds because they have ALA, but you're not going to get much EPA and DHA out of those hemp seeds when you run them through the machine of human physiology if you're also eating seed oils. If you're savvy enough to not be eating seed oils, why not just eat an egg yolk? Or why not just eat tallow or butter or ghee or these animal fats that have preformed EPA and DHA in them in great amounts and probably in much more bioavailable fashions because they're potentially phospholipid derived fatty acids.
Sorry, hey ladies, I'm doing an interview. Can you just please chill out? Yo, man, I work with 10 women and in this place is a cat show. I gotta tread lightly here. So depression and anxiety are the most common reasons why someone will come see me. And we, of course, know that the mind and body, they're connected. So if someone said, you know what, I've been feeling like ass all these years and I want to make a change and I want to start eating more like the Carnivore MD 2.0, What would be the easiest way to get started? And I do think supplementations are absolutely necessary, man, because I don't think it's realistic for a lot of people to go out and, get a bone and slice that up and eat the marrow. So I know you made it, I don't want to say cheating, but like shortcuts to some extent, made it easier for people to access these kind of nutrients. What would be the easiest way to get started, Paul?
So I think there's two things. You got to take a couple things out and put a couple things in. And sometimes what you take out is as important as what you put in. So let's start with what you take out. And I think take out the seed oils, corn, canola, safflower, sunflower, soybean, grapeseed, anything that comes from a seed, get rid of those.
They're found everywhere, right? So it's like they really have to make a commitment to knowing what foods contain all these.
And the easiest thing is just to shop on the outside of the grocery store, right? And even I'm not a fan of vegetables, but I recorded a reel about this. I don't think we've posted it yet. Just go around the outside of the grocery store. People have said that before. Don't shop on the inside of the grocery store. If you're eating anything in a bag or a box, minimize it. Just eat the things on the outside. What is a grocery store? You walk in the grocery store. A lot of times there's bread on the outside of a grocery store. I would skip that because I'm not a fan of grains, but go straight to the produce. If you want to eat vegetables, eat vegetables. I'm not a fan of vegetables. We had a short discussion about that. There's much more in-depth about vegetables on my podcast, which is called Fundamental Health, if you're curious about why I'm not a fan of vegetables. But if you want to eat vegetables, it's way better than processed food. Then eat fruit. I'm a big fan of fruit because it's the least toxic plant food. Then you keep going around the outside of the grocery store. You might come to the seafood aisle, get some fish, get some shrimp, get some seafood. Then you might come to the cheese aisle, get some cheese, preferably get some raw cheese. Then you might come to the meats, get some meat. Don't get processed meat, get muscle meat, preferably grass-fed, grass-finished. If they've got liver or heart, get some liver or heart. If you can't get fresh organs, get desiccated organs like we make at Heart and Soil. And then, that's about all you need to do in the grocery stores. You're pretty much done at that point. So get rid of the seed oils, don't eat processed foods, and then eat a little more meat. I did do a reel about this, just the idea that most people listening to this need to eat more meat. And if you're already eating meat, eat a little more. If you're not eating meat, you need to get meat in your diet. And meat is meat and organs. If you can get fresh organs, great. If you can't, get them desiccated. Yeah. So those are the key things. That's where you start. And I think that I just don't believe that there's many people on the planet who won't have massive changes in the way they feel and look and live in their life when they do that.
All right. But Paul, Carnivore MD, for my lazy ass Gen Zs, these young guns that live in their mommy's basement playing video games, and they're not willing to make massive changes. And they say, Doc, don't you have a supplement, something that I could take to get started on it? I like to go by the rule of three. Some dude from Duke taught me that people could do like three things. Hopefully these Gen Zs too. So if they're willing to buy something from Heart and Soil Supplements, I know it's a very general thing, but what are the top three most important supplements in Heart and Soil?
I mean, you start with beef organs. It's the closest thing that we can make to a multivitamin, but it's food, right? It's heart, liver, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. Again, I want you to get those things fresh. Yeah. But if you won't get them fresh, get them desiccated.
I love that you say that too. Eat the food first, but if you're not willing to do what you need to do to get them, take the supplement.
Yeah. If you're a man, then we have a supplement called Whole Package, which has testicle in it. And the reviews on that supplement are crazy.
Yeah.
People have all sorts of benefits. I mean, sexual benefits, romantic benefits, erectile benefits, like gym benefits. Like there's valuable things in testicle.
Nice.
There's, even beyond testosterone, there's probably peptides and things that support the production of male hormones. If you're a lady, we have a supplement called Her Package, which actually has uterus and fallopian tubes and ovaries in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And then, I think that in terms of the third one, like there's all kinds of stuff. I think mood, memory, and brain is where I would go next.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that because of my clients, if we're focusing on mental health here, that would be a great one, especially for the omega-3 fatty acids and also the phosphatidylserine content in there too.
Yep. Phosphatidylserine and all kinds of other things. I mean, there's peptides in the brain that we don't even know about. I mean, there are peptides in the brain that we know about, but there's peptides we don't even know about. So that's a great place to start. I get a little bit sad when I think about people just popping supplements, but I also understand that if someone puts 6 capsules of a desiccated organ supplement in their mouth and they feel better, maybe that's a spark. And maybe that's enough to get them off the couch. And maybe they go for a walk and they get sun. And then they think the next time they go to the grocery store, like, oh, that supplement, from that crazy guy, that carnivore guy. Like, it made me feel better. Maybe I should eat some real meat. Maybe I'll, spend a little extra money on this good quality meat instead of the Twinkies or the cookies that I'm gonna eat this week. And maybe it starts, like, that's my hope, is that the supplement is the first step that anyone can take, and that it starts a chain reaction. And that, ultimately I hope people stop taking the supplements and just eat the fresh organs. So, but it's great because I think it's accessible to anyone. I want to write a kid's book, Joe, because I don't know how many children and parents would be saved lifetimes of, childhood, quote unquote, trauma. I say that kind of jokingly, when they're forced to eat their vegetables. Like, kids, you will have the easiest, kids will not have any problem eating fruit or meat. And the story. And then you'll have a nutrient-rich diet for a kid and a healthy kid, and you'll have no fights at the dinner table. So.
Yeah. Last question. And this is from my daughter, because I told her that I was interviewing the Carnivore MD 2.0, and she was very excited. She's a foodie, big foodie. Uh-huh. And truthfully, me and my daughter, we actually love meat and fruits. It's like our favorite thing to eat. So she asked me to ask you, if you were trapped on an island, there are only 3 foods that you could consume for the rest of your life. What would those 3 be? And if I could just share with you mine first. I told her, without question, Sophia Yee, mangoes. It's the most delicious thing. Mangoes, number 1. Filet mignon, followed by Korean kimchi. So I really do like kimchi. How about for you, man? What are like your 3 personal favorites?
So I think that this is a tough one. I'd probably start with ribeye steak. I like the fatty steak. And then I got to have heart. I want to have an organ in there. Well, probably I'd do liver. So I'd have a little bit of liver, heart. I'd have a little bit of liver, a steak, and then a fruit to get the carbohydrates. And the fruit it's a tough call because I get a lot of really good fruit here, man. And mangoes are probably in the top 3. Have you ever had Rollinia?
No.
It's called the lemon meringue pie fruit. And I had one the other day and it was pretty damn good. It actually really tastes.
For the rest of your life? Like, I'm telling you, I could commit to mangoes, man. That's how much I love mangoes. I could commit to mangoes for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I could probably commit to mangoes. I could probably commit to pineapples. I could probably eat papayas every day for the rest of my life. I'm going to go eat a papaya, but Rollinia is pretty good. So yeah. I think Rollinia is probably my favorite fruit ever. It's a really special fruit if you never had it.
Brother, would you ever consider looping your own urine? It's really big in the holistic wellness community. It's gaining a lot of steam and momentum. Would you ever consider doing that?
No, I wouldn't, because maybe I need to do more research, but everything I know about human physiology is that, well, this actually loops into an interesting thing that I'll just say as we wrap up here. The liver is not a filter, right? People would say, because I said liver was one of the foods that I would eat on that desert island. And people would say, the liver's a filter. Why would you eat the liver? The liver's not a filter. It doesn't collect toxins the way that your colander collects spaghetti. And you probably don't want to eat spaghetti after this podcast because grains are not great for humans. But what the liver does is it transforms toxins for excretion in the urine and the poop. So I think that the next trend is going to be eating your poop. If now we're talking about looping your urine, but like those eating your poop and your urine don't make a lot of sense to me because that's how your body's getting rid of toxins. Your body's transforming things that are water soluble or making them water soluble to get rid of them in your urine. And I worry that, this is how heavy metals will often go out of the body, in the urine or the poop. So if you're looping your urine, you're never allowing your body to detoxify all of these things. Now, I know there's this interesting story about these amanita mushrooms and this fable of Santa Claus and how people would drink reindeer pee and get high because the reindeers would eat the amanita mushrooms and there was some psychoactive ingredient. So maybe I would drink reindeer pee before I would drink my own pee to have some sort of a psychedelic experience and with a shaman from the tradition. But I like to let my body's detoxification work in a unidirectional fashion rather than looping it back.
Yeah. The way you're doing it, it works for you and a lot of other people. So, I say if it's working for you, keep doing it, brother.
Wait, did you drink your urine this morning?
No, but there's this guy, Rodney Lavoie Jr. And he's been looping for quite some time and friends with Alex Zek. And I had a little taste of his. It tasted like pool water, man. That's what it tastes like. But brother, Good doctor. So nice to finally meet you after all this time.
Yeah,
We
man.
really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And the best way to find you on social media is Carnivore MD 2.0 on
That's
Instagram.
Instagram. Yep.
And as far as the people who want to get onto the heart and soil supplements,
heartandsoil.co.
oh, very simple. Heartandsoil.co. Brother, thank you so much. It was an honor to meet you.
Good to meet you, man.
All right, be well. Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.